Coming up, Strike UK, a day of disruption on the rails with the weekend of it to come. With mortgages rising and deals disappearing, we'll get you the latest advice. And Run America, the marathon man who became the fastest Brit to go from coast to coast. Strike UK, the start of days of disruption on the rails. Members of two different unions are walking out over a dispute over pay. The action is hitting 15 different train companies, with some running no services at all, with no resolution in sight.
I travelled all the way from Australia, so 3 long-haul flights, just want to get back home, and then, rail strikes.
It's never nice going to hospital, so it would have been nice to get an easier journey there.
No, I understand why they're striking, so I support them.
It's really annoying because now it's 9 a.m. and I was meant to get in for about 8:30.
Also this lunchtime, the former Prime Minister's missing messages, the latest on the demands from the COVID inquiry. With mortgages rising and deals disappearing, we'll get you the latest advice. And Run William Run, the record-breaking British marathon man who ran from LA to New York.
I've done the UK, I've done America now. I think Europe really interests me. Who knows what's going to happen?
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Nina Hossain.
Good afternoon. Train drivers are on strike again, but what impact is the action having? Members of the ASLEV union have walked out at 15 different train companies in their dispute over pay. But with some people able to work from home, many passengers are getting used to having a plan B for strike days. It may be different this weekend, though, when more strikes by ASLEF and the RMT union impact leisure travel, including some big events like the FA Cup final. Chloe Keedy has the latest on the disruption and the lack of hope that the dispute will be resolved anytime soon.
The sight of eerily quiet stations, empty departure boards and trains stopped in their tracks is becoming a very familiar one. Another day, another round of disruption for passengers.
So it's affected me with my journey to hospital today. So what would have been a straight train journey, I've had to take a few extra buses and the tube as well.
It's taking me like over 20 minutes extra to get in today, and it's really annoying because now it's 9 a.m. and I was meant to get in for about 8:30.
A 24-hour strike by train drivers is the first of 3 walkouts this week because of a long-running dispute between unions and the government over jobs, conditions and pay. With only around 4 out of 10 trains running today, many have chosen to work from home. But not everyone was able to change their travel plans.
I travelled all the way from Australia, so 3 long-haul flights, just want to get back home, and then, rail strikes. But I support the strikes, but it's a bit of a delay. So now I'm going to have to pay for a taxi.
We had our tickets booked in advance weeks and weeks ago. We've still had no notification that the train's being cancelled. It's only for us checker that we found out it wasn't on, so we've had to make other arrangements.
The Coldplay gig she's trying to get to isn't the only event expected to attract a big crowd this weekend. Sir Elton John is performing in Manchester today, tomorrow and on Saturday, when 100,000 people will also be making their way to Surrey for the annual Epsom Derby. Saturday is also the day of the FA Cup final, a Manchester derby but taking place at Wembley, and Beyoncé's comeback tour reaches London this weekend too. But the union organising today's strike denies that it's targeting those big events and said the government had deliberately offered it a deal that it couldn't accept.
What we had was a rather deceitful deal containing all our red lines that were destined to fail, and carrying out the Tory legislation, we took the strike action exactly 14 days from that happening, and then we spread the load over our rest day and roster patterns so we don't hit the same people all the time. I don't think there's a day or a weekend where there isn't an event that's going to be impacted at some point.
But the government insists its pay offer is fair and reasonable.
They've been offered 4% and another 4% in the next year. The average train driver is earning about £60,000 a year. 20% of train drivers earn over £70,000 per year. And I think at a point where we've also put a huge investment into the railways to keep them going during the pandemic and to support the jobs that were in the railways during the pandemic, I think that the unions, ASLEF and the RMT, should be balloting their members on that offer now.
With the next strikes scheduled for Friday and Saturday, passengers are being advised to check before you travel. But then again, you probably don't need reminding of that by now. Chloe Keedy, ITV News.
All right, let's get a snapshot of the impact the strike action is having this lunchtime. Our North of England reporter, Amy Welsh, is at Manchester Piccadilly Station and Tom Johnston is at Newcastle Central Station. To Amy first. Amy, how's it doing there?
Well, normally 30 trains an hour leave Manchester Piccadilly, but as you might just be able to make out on the boards behind me, today there are only 3 an hour. Transport for Wales is the only service operating out of this station today, and with strikes starting at the earlier time of 7:30 this morning, commuters have pretty much given up getting from A to B on time. But it isn't just commuters affected by this strike today. It is, of course, half term, and earlier we spoke to one mum who arrived here hoping to take her children to Harry Potter Land in London today. She hadn't realised the trains weren't running and has had to take her disappointed children back home again. Coldplay and Sir Elton John are both performing in the city tonight, and there is further strike action planned on Saturday which will affect Manchester City and Manchester United fans who will be attempting to make their way to Wembley. Passengers are, as always, to allow extra time for their journey and to plan ahead. And while the unions insist they are not deliberately targeting major events, it looks like for the public this misery is set to continue.
Well, the disruption we've seen across the country has obviously impacted Newcastle as well on what would normally be a very busy half-term. It's been very quiet here at Newcastle Central Station. LNER has been running some limited services, but other providers like TransPennine and Northern have been running no services whatsoever. I've been speaking to passengers this morning and they've told me that they are frustrated by this ongoing row, but at the same time there was an understanding from some about why people were taking to the picket lines. One of the people I spoke to today had travelled over from Canada to fulfil his 35-year dream of seeing Hadrian's Wall in the flesh, only to find out his train to Northumberland was not going to leave the station and he had to find alternative means of getting there. This weekend, the disruption will also impact on the Magic Weekend at St James's Park. That's a huge weekend of rugby league action in the city, and it's going to bring thousands of fans in with it. The organisation NE1, which promotes Newcastle as a destination, says it's confident that that will still go ahead and be a success, and this disruption continues, and so does the impact on passengers.
Tom Johnston and Amy Welsh, thank you very much for those updates. Thank you. And for a full list of which services are affected, head to our website, itv.com/news. Next is lunchtime, the looming deadline over a demand from the head of the COVID inquiry to see all of Boris Johnson's WhatsApp messages and private notebooks over the course of the pandemic. This morning, a government minister said he hopes it can be resolved by tomorrow's deadline of 4 p.m. I'm joined by our political correspondent, Libby Vina. Libby, another day of will they, won't they send over this information. Remind us how we got here.
Well, the chair of the inquiry, Baroness Hallett, has made it clear that she was very unhappy with the initial submissions from the government, some evidence that was heavily redacted and key things she thought should have been included weren't. So she has said that when it comes to Boris Johnson, who was the Prime Minister at the time, when it comes to his WhatsApp messages and diaries, she wants to see them in full. The Cabinet Office has been resisting that, saying that it should be the judge of what is relevant and highly personal details shouldn't be released. But the chair believes that personal details are important because she wants to see how focused the government actually was on the pandemic in its early stages. Now, as you say, the government cabinet minister has suggested that this may be resolved by tomorrow, Mel Stride. But when I spoke to him, he was much less clear as to why the government, given the scale of the pandemic, actually needed to withhold anything. Surely you should be candid about what went on.
Well, they were exceptional circumstances, and that's precisely why the government is having such a thorough inquiry to get to the bottom.
But it's not that thorough if you withhold documents.
Well, we provided, as I say, 55,000 documents, all these witness statements, corporate witness statements, and so on. There are these WhatsApps which are being looked into by the Cabinet Office at the moment. There is this deadline tomorrow, and it may well be that everything is resolved by then. But it's not really for me to start to try and prejudge exactly where that will end up, I think.
Libby, if it isn't resolved, what happens next?
Well, it could go to a judicial review. That would be the government's way of trying to stall further. The big question is, why does the government feel it needs to protect Boris Johnson's WhatsApps? I mean, some people, including the Labour Party, suggest that's because they could also be fairly embarrassing for the current Prime Minister.
Libby Vina, thank you. Next, if you are trying to secure a mortgage for a new home or trying to remortgage, then it has just become a little harder to secure a good deal. Hundreds of loans have been taken off the market by lenders because of concerns interest rates may go even higher to try to bring down inflation. Nearly 10% of mortgage deals, around 800, have been withdrawn. Those still on offer are costing more. Since the start of May, the rates on an average 2-year fixed-rate mortgage has risen to 5.38%, and the average 5-year fixed-rate mortgage is just over 5%. I'm joined now by Sally Mitchell from The Mortgage Mum, which is a mortgage broker. Welcome. Look, we're approaching percentages that some, especially younger homeowners, will have never come across before. What are you telling people? What are people telling you, about the impact that it's having on their monthly outgoings?
Oh, they're really very worried. This comes on top of a cost of living crisis. We've had the energy issue. Inflation is not going down as quickly as they hoped it would. And of course, although inflation has dropped, the sticky points of things like food are just going up again. So it's really difficult. It's just another burden for the average person to have to bear, unfortunately.
And Sally, in the last couple of days, these 800 deals disappearing off the market. If you are in the process of trying to buy a house or a flat, what should you do right now? Pause or press ahead with one of the deals that are on offer?
Oh, it's so stressful for people. These things come out, it seems, out of the blue. And of course, if you're in the middle of your purchase, but you haven't actually got your mortgage offer and that product is withdrawn, then you're looking at having to pay a lot more. And in fact, for some people, the affordability just won't work out. So they might actually stand to lose the property that they're trying to purchase. If they're remortgaging, then they're looking at certainly paying, a lot more per month than they were 3 days ago.
We are expecting interest rates to rise again. Are we likely, therefore, to see more deals withdrawn? And if so, what advice have you got for people out there?
It's so difficult. I mean, one of the main reasons that the fixed rate mortgage products have increased, been withdrawn and then coming back on the market at an increased rate, is because the swap rates have actually increased. So although we are affected very much so by the Bank of England base rate, we did see, even though that was increasing, fixed rate mortgages going down a little bit in the last few months. But now swap rates have increased, so therefore fixed rate mortgages have gone up. And, it's really difficult. You have to get all your ducks in a row. You have to get organised ahead of time, make sure all your paperwork is in, so that if something like this happens and there's a 2 or 4 hour window to get that application in and to secure your product before things change, then you're ready to do so. I know brokers are working round the clock over the weekends, over the bank holidays, to try and get these applications in and secure those rates.
So many variables. Sally, very briefly, are you starting to see it have an impact on house sales, on the housing market itself?
It's really strange. To start with this year, we did see a slowdown in purchase. Most of the clients that we were dealing with were remortgages or product transfers. But in the last couple of months, people seem to have regained a little bit of confidence and maybe a feeling of, well, how much worse can it get? And then, of course, the last few days shows that things can change quite quickly. The market is fundamentally really resilient. It's a good, solid market. I think personally a lot of people are saying I'm not going anywhere until we know what's going on, especially with interest rates, the Bank of England rate looking like it's going to go 5.25, 5.5 by the end of the year.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Sally Mitchell, thank you very much for all that sage advice. Thank you. Still to come, fears of a TV blackout over the Women's World Cup, which kicks off in July. And the ultra-marathon man, the Briton who raced across America in memory of his mum. First, we'll all be seeing many more longer lorries on the roads in England, Scotland and Wales from today. The trucks are up to 18.5 metres long, an extra 2 metres in length. The government says it will save thousands of tonnes of carbon dioxide from being pumped into the air. But campaigners are worried about the risks to pedestrians and cyclists. Our correspondent Ben Chapman has been in Cambridgeshire and has this report.
So here we have 2 lorries. This is one that you would see on the roads pretty much every day, the traditional length. This is one of the new longer lorries that is going to be allowed on the roads from today. And as I reach the end, you can see there are a good couple of paces more on this new longer one, just over 2 metres more, in fact, bringing the length of this one to just over 18.5 metres. And as you can see, it's been loaded up with straw and you can get quite a bit more on the end compared with the old one. And that is the reason the government has changed the rules to introduce these longer lorries. They say it's about allowing hauliers to carry more goods and therefore they have to make fewer journeys. The government claims that this could take up to 1 in 12 lorry journeys off the road, boosting the economy and also cutting carbon emissions. Now, this company has been trialling these for a good few years. They've got 30 of them. The boss is a little less enthusiastic than the government, although he said in some circumstances they are useful.
They're very good for motorway trunking work, so moving huge amounts of product from A to B along a motorway network. They work very well for that. If you've got shop in-town deliveries, they are just no good at all.
Now, the big drawback with these longer lorries is they're going to need to swing out a lot more to get round tight corners. The boss here says that actually makes them quite impractical for doing town centre deliveries to supermarkets, for instance. He's not using them for that anymore. Road safety and cycling campaigners say it makes them dangerous. It creates more spaces, more blind spots for cyclists and pedestrians to get caught in, which will lead to accidents. The government insists these lorries are safe. They say they've been rigorously tested for the last 11 years and they could be worth up to £1.4 billion to the economy. I think the big question is what the take-up is going to be. Given all the drawbacks to these lorries, the Campaign for Better Transport says a better way of getting lorries off the roads would be to use the railways.
Ben Chapman reporting there. Now, we are just weeks away from the Women's Football World Cup in Australia and New Zealand, and yet there hasn't been a deal between the organisers, FIFA, and the broadcasters to show it on TV here. Well, now the government has become involved. Live to our political correspondent, Harry Horton at Westminster. It's astonishing that a deal hasn't already been done.
Yeah, it is astonishing. The World Cup starts in 7 weeks' time. The England Women's World Cup squad is due to be announced in just under 15 minutes' time. And yet no deal has been struck on how to show the game on TV here in the UK. Not just in the UK, in Germany, in France, in Spain and Italy as well. And essentially this is a row between broadcasters and FIFA about how much to pay to show the tournament. Now, FIFA claims that broadcasters have offered less than 10% of the money they offered to show the men's World Cup. The FIFA boss, Gianni Infantino, says the offer is a slap in the face of all great players and women worldwide. Broadcasters point out that because the tournament is in Australia and New Zealand, the kick-off times are actually at less prominent times of the day, so audiences are likely to be smaller. Now, sports ministers for all those countries have put out a joint statement today expressing their concern, urging FIFA and broadcasters to quickly reach an agreement. Promoting the women's game has been a big priority for Rishi Sunak, especially after that Euros win last summer. He will want to see a deal agreed, but time is running out.
Harry Horton, thank you. Al Pacino is to be a dad again at the age of 83. The Godfather star's expecting his fourth child with 29-year-old film producer girlfriend Noor Al-Fala. The pair have reportedly been dating since the pandemic. Pacino's co-star from The Irishman, Robert De Niro, recently had his seventh child at the age of 79. Finally, if you're a runner, you may clock up a few miles, maybe a few dozen in a week, but running across America, well, that's what William Googe has just done, all the way from LA to New York in a staggering 55 days, 23 hours and 49 hours. Sharon Thomas takes up the story of the record-breaking ultra marathon man.
We are about to attempt to run across the whole of the US for 3,175 miles.
For a man who didn't even like running, this was one heck of a challenge. William Googe set off from Los Angeles on the 2nd of April to New York, hitting the highways and mountains of 13 states. 56 days of running, 12 pairs of trainers.
We'll sit like this on your wall.
They just couldn't believe that somebody would do all that running for no particular reason.
The 29-year-old's tale is reminiscent of the 1994 blockbuster Forrest Gump, which sees Tom Hanks's character run across America, showing the same strength of character.
We kind of went through it all, actually. Everything other than hurricanes and actually snowfall. It got up to about 37 degrees. At its coldest, it was, I think, minus 17. So, yeah, like the film, it was also a lot of fun.
I'll have a can of Coke. Packet of crisps.
You need a lot in the tank to cross America on foot. 7,000 calories a day for this former rugby player, stopping to eat every 6 hours. And you have to have a few treats. William only took up ultra running after he lost his mum to cancer. She was just 53.
I found myself running when I was sad, upset, annoyed. It might be 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd get out the door, go for a run, and by the time I got back, I'd always feel a little bit better. So, yeah, running became my version of therapy.
So far, the 29-year-old has raised more than £55,000 for Macmillan Cancer.
There was never a moment I was going to stop. I always say I've got an angel on my side. So, yeah, I was confident the whole way through.
At the finish line, it was an emotional reunion with his father and brother, there to see him smash the previous record for the fastest Brit to run across America by 10 days. That was set back in 1969. Next, it's a holiday, and the trainers are staying at home. Sharon Thomas, ITV News.
Mary's here at 6:30 from me. Bye-bye.
The warm weather continues. So why not squeeze the most out of the day? Heinz Tomato Ketchup sponsors ITV National Weather.
Hello there, good afternoon to you. Many of us started the day under cloudy skies, thick enough for a bit of drizzle in the air as well, but that cloud has continued to break up, and as we head through this afternoon, more in the way of sunshine. That saying, some of us holding on to that cloud, especially across the far north and east of Scotland, running down along the North Sea coast and extending through the Midlands down towards southwestern parts of England and Wales. Quite a contrast in our temperatures with that onshore breeze along the North Sea, fresher temperatures, but warm in the sunshine, highs of 20, 21 degrees Celsius. And as we head through the course of this evening and night, we are going to see that cloud along the North Sea push back in from the east. Across the west, clearer skies. Tonight won't be a particularly cold night. And then heading into tomorrow, a cloudy start away from the far west, but that cloud will break up through the day, retreat back towards the coast. We'll see plenty of sunshine out there tomorrow and some warm temperatures too, highs of 20 to 23 degrees Celsius. Bye-bye for now.
Heinz Tomato Ketchup sponsors ITV National Weather.